Oh yeah, prison was far more stressful. That may not even really make sense to most people.
It seems like you had a good idea of how to work the system in there. You had people on your side. You knew how to kind of manipulate people when you needed to. Like, so why was prison more stressful?
For a couple of reasons. Number one, the guards and the administrators were a wild card. I mean, they can disappear you if they want to. It's called diesel therapy. They can put you in transit for 6 months. Nobody has any idea where you are, whether you're dead or alive. And if you go on the BOP website, it just says in transit. To where? From where? You're not allowed access to a phone. You're not allowed access to email. You're not allowed access to even a pen and paper. Literally nobody knows where you are. So that was always a concern. I wasn't afraid of solitary, certainly. In fact, when threatened with solitary, I said, Warden, I got right in the warden's face one day. He got in my face, I should say, to threaten me with solitary. And I said, Warden, I have gone nose to nose with Al Qaeda, with Hezbollah, with the Iranians, and you want me to be afraid of you? I said, come on, give me some credit. And you're solitary? I've lived in far worse places than Loretto, Pennsylvania. And besides, I said, I could stand to lose a couple of pounds. Like, I'm not afraid of your solitary. And then he backed off. And then, one of the Italians told me something funny one day. He mentioned, he was talking to a guard, and this guard was like a tough guy. He was the only guard who wore a stab vest because he was so unpopular. He was pretty confident somebody was going to stab him at some point. And so the Italian said, what housing unit are you going to be in for the next quarter? And he said, I'm going to be in Central 1. And he said, oh, my buddy John's in Central 1. And he says, John, the CIA guy? And my friend said, yeah. And the guard says, I never fuck with that guy. And the Italian said, yeah, why not? And he said, that's all I need. Work 8 hours and then go outside and CNN standing next to my car? No, thanks. I did a Freedom of Information Act request on myself while I was there. I have a whole chapter about it in the book. And most of it was garbage. It was 250 pages. It was like my visitors list, my medical records, just dumb stuff. But then there were 6 pages that were clearly marked FOIA exempt, do not release to inmate. And either somebody was so stupid that they couldn't read at the Bureau of Prisons FOIA office, or they took pity on me and thought that I should have access to this. But one of the things that stood out was this memo. It was from a week before I arrived, and it was from the warden to all staff telling them that I was coming. And these big block letters, it said, caution, inmate has access to the media. That's what they were afraid of. They said something that was so petty that the reason why I wasn't in a minimum security camp, which is where the judge ordered that I go, was because I was trained in escape techniques. Well, first of all, you watch too many movies because there is no training in escape techniques. Secondly, I knew what you were afraid of because the FOIA request. You were afraid that I'd talk to the press. And I said to the warden one day, I said, this whole thing backfired on you. Because if I had gone to the camp, I would have kept my head down. I would have done my 23 months and I would have gone home quietly. But you had to make a big production out of it. Well, I said, when I entered this prison, I never gave up my constitutional rights to freedom of expression, freedom of press, freedom of speech. And so I'm going to say yes to every interview that is requested of me. And I did. CNN, ABC News, Atlantic Monthly, The Economist, Playboy, Time Magazine, NPR twice. I said yes to everybody. And then Jake Tapper came up one day to interview me, and the warden was sitting next to me. And he said, what's your biggest challenge day to day? And I said, dealing with words like this. And I pointed at the warden. He just sat there like that.
I know that like a lot of people who are in prison, they can be very manipulative themselves. They've gotten there for manipulating other people. How did you like learn who you could trust and who you couldn't trust? Based on that.
Well, I had a little bit of help. My attorneys were very helpful before I got there. One of them said, he said, listen, you need to be really alert. He said, the CIA is furious that your sentence is so short. And so they're going to try to set you up. They want you to do at least 5 years, and they're going to set you up. So beware. I was there about 6 months. There was an Afghan American pharmacist a couple of cells down from me. And he had an oxy problem, so he was doing 6 years. And he came up to me one day, really nice guy. He came up to me one day and he said, hey, John, the spokesman for the Taliban wants to meet you. He just got transferred here. I said, the spokesman for the Taliban? Are you talking about that case from New Jersey? And he said, yeah. I said, I don't want to talk to that guy. I got nothing to say to that guy. And he goes, oh, okay, I'll tell him. A couple of days later, I'm walking around the track outside, and this like guy with a beard down to his waist, obviously Afghan, is walking right toward me with his hand out like to shake my hand. And I put my hands up and I said, don't touch me. And as soon as I said that, I looked past him, and there's a guard in the woods outside the fence with a camera with a long range scope. And he's going click, 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 click. And I said, touch me and I'm going to break your arm off. And he's like, come on, man, we have a lot in common. I said, we don't have anything in common except for the fact that I tried to kill people like you. Don't touch me. And then he walked away. He was only in the prison for a week and they transferred him out. So that was their attempt to set me up. And then, otherwise, and I say this early on in the book, don't trust anybody. Mark Lanzelotti was worthy of my trust, and he was the only person that I trusted.
How did this all impact your family?
I no longer have my family. That's the toll that it took on my family. Yeah.
So no relationship with your kids or anything like that?
Barely. Yeah. There's one of my kids. I have 5 kids. I have 4 boys and a girl. One of the boys I'm really close to. We talk almost every day. But the rest is just very difficult.
Is it because of like the media attention around this and maybe their embarrassment, or is it because of lies that were spread? Like, what's it?
Yeah, mostly. Yes.
So what was like the turning point for you in prison? Like, how did you use that experience like to your advantage?
I decided very early on that this was worthy of a book. And so, everybody in prison's writing a book. And it's funny. One of the guards even made fun of me. He's like, oh, you're writing a book? And I go, yeah. He goes, every in prison writes a book. And I said, but no has made number 5 on the New York Times bestsellers list, which is what my first book did. So like, don't talk down to me, idiot. So I started writing, but then they would raid my cell and they would confiscate what I had written. So what I started doing is every single day I would write. And then when I was done writing, I would fold it up, put it in an envelope, mark it legal mail, which they can't mess with, and send it to my attorney. And she just held it for me. I ended up writing large swaths of the book twice because I couldn't remember, did I write that or did I just think it, So, so I sent everything to my attorney. When I got out of prison, I just hired a Georgetown student to transcribe it. And then I started the editing. I sent it to my agent, and then the agent got it placed. It was published by Simon & Schuster, Rare Bird Books. And and it won 2 literary awards. So having something to focus on like that, every day I had to focus and write. I told myself that I wouldn't get up until I had written 500 words and then gotten it sent off to the lawyer. So that was what I did.
And so would your lawyer then have to relay it to the CIA to make sure that they were cool with everything so that you wouldn't get in more trouble?
I did that when I was all done.
Okay.
She just held it. She didn't even open the envelopes. She just held them for me.
Did you ever have any like regret? I mean, you've shared that you've essentially lost your family. You were put through the ringer. You went through so much stress and chaos. Do you have regret in doing what you did now?
Never a moment's regret. The only real mistake that I made was not hiring an attorney before blowing the whistle. That's what I should have done. I should have had the attorney sitting next to me when I did it. But otherwise, no. Like substantively, no regrets.